All right, I told you yesterday that I thought Nico Iamaleava would be questionable because while a concussion is a concussion and you're either in or you're out, Caleb, there's no fighting through the pain. There's no giving a shot to dull the pain. It's either you pass the protocol or you don't. And I have been told that he's passed several, if not all the signs talking about Nico of the concussion protocol, but everybody's different. That might not be the case on Friday. Might not be the case on Saturday. So I'm not declaring he's going to play, but I will tell you this, based off who I've talked to, I believe that Nico will play. I believe he'll run out there on the first down. Here is what I have been told. I have been told that Nico's parents, as they should do, you're now a father, Caleb, so I'm sure you can understand this. They've reached out to other quarterbacks that have had concussion issues. They've done their fair share of research. Nico was on the practice field on Wednesday. Would it stun me if Gaston Moore was the starter because of Nico Iamaleava's concussion? No, but I think he will play. I think everybody's doing their due diligence. If this were UTEP, I don't think there's any question, Caleb, you would sit him, and that would be the prudent thing to do. The problem is this is the biggest game of the year. But even that being said, you cannot make a decision with this young man moving forward that might jeopardize his future. He is the franchise, Caleb, not just for this year, but for next. So this ultimately is going to lie not on Nico and not on Josh Heupel, but just on UT's medical staff. And if he continues to pass concussion protocols into the week. That's just where it is right now. Everybody's different. I wish I could give you a hard and true answer based off my sources. If you ask me right now to bet my mortgage on it, I would bet he plays, but I wouldn't want to take that bet. I'm at about 70% that he plays, Caleb. What do you make of him being deemed questionable by Josh Heupel?
I think either way I look at this, it's gamesmanship. If he's not playing, you don't want to out and out lie, but you don't want Georgia to know he's not playing because you still want them to at least have to prepare for him. So you're going to list as questionable. If he is playing, I mean, I would theoretically say you still want Georgia confused on what they have to do, so you list as questionable. Although I don't think look, if he is playing, listing him as questionable is not going to change up Georgia's game plan this week really that much, is it? So
no, it is funny that you bring that up because that's where I was going to go. Whether or not it's Nico or it's Gaston Moore, aren't you thinking that Georgia is thinking their best opportunity is to stop Tennessee's running game? This may be the first time that a defense truly walks up and challenges the Vols at the line of scrimmage, maybe with the exception of the Arkansas game. I'm talking about 8, 9 in the box because Tennessee has not proved consistently proficient at throwing the ball downfield, Caleb. I mean, that's the way I would defend Tennessee, no matter if it's Gaston, Nico, Casey, Brent Schaefer. I just love saying that. I don't think it really matters. You're probably going to defend Tennessee the same way.
Yeah, I think so too. And the only difference with Gaston Moore is you probably won't have your linebackers in spy at all in that situation. You'll just be sending them on blitzes the whole game. I think that would be the one big difference with Georgia is with Gaston Moore, because as far as what I've seen, I could be wrong, Dave, but it doesn't look like Gaston Moore is much of a runner. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's very fair to say. Yes. It fits the Caucasian stereotype like we've thrown out there with Will Brooks. But in this season of overachievers, and for Cooper Mays, it's been a series of years of being overachiever, and Will Brooks has been an overachiever, still technically a walk-on. Wouldn't it fit the narrative if Gaston Moore, a walk-on who people question his athletic ability, and he's not very athletic, Wouldn't it would fit the narrative if he went to Georgia and won that football game?
Oh, yes. I mean, it really would. You're talking about Will Brooks, right? Or
No. I was talking about Gaston. If he goes down there, given what Will Brooks has done, the fact that I think this is a team of overachievers, and that's not to belittle their talent at all. I think this is a team of overachievers that plays hard and has great culture. It would be apropos if Gaston Moore went down there and got what would be the most monumental win, considering a backup quarterback is in there that I can ever remember. The only one that I could think of would be at Georgia when Tennessee almost pulled the upset with James Banks running out there at quarterback. And that was when practice was open, Caleb, and we didn't know that James Banks was going to play quarterback that much. And I'm not sure Tennessee knew. I think they had about 12 plays ready for him. So that brings me back to Gaston Moore. How much would that fit the narrative if Gaston Moore goes down there and beats Georgia? And I think it's doable.
So there's actually there's another level to this, which is the reason it'd be a great underdog story. James Banks was a 5-star recruit. James Banks was considered a generational talent as a potential quarterback, wasn't he? As a guy who could have eventually turned into a superstar. So they just started him before he was ready, but he had raw talent. No one considers Gaston Moore a future generational talent at quarterback. No. So it's almost the reverse of this, where if you do it and you go win, I mean, you know, I understand the talk of Coach Prime and Deion with Coach of the Year this year because of what he's done at Colorado, because that's pretty impressive. But if Tennessee has Gaston Moore, goes down to Athens and beats Georgia, I'm just saying Josh Heupel should be crowned Coach of the Year right there. Shouldn't he? Just throw out the Coach of the Year award and give it to him. That'd be the most impressive coaching move. And you're right, it's kind of doable. And that's kind of the crazy part about it. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's certainly possible. I will give you that, Dave.
Pointed out on the message board that it was CJ Leak who started that game at Georgia, and they got James Banks in there really quickly. The thing I would remind you is that Chris Leak was leaning towards or committed to the Vols. I think he was just leaning towards the Vols at that point, and that's why they took CJ Leak. And Chris Leak was coming to Tennessee, period, into discussion. And they were sitting in the stands at Sanford Stadium, and they saw their son get surpassed by a guy that they knew didn't have the best work ethic, running around with these 10 or 12 plays that they had, which was a lot of bootlegs, a lot of design quarterback runs. And they said, no, CJ just got the short end of the stick. I'm going to keep it clean. And there's no way Chris is going there. That game really, looking back at it, for some of our younger viewers out there and listeners, set the SEC in this different motion that if Chris Leak is still, if he becomes a Vol, I'm not sure that Philip Fulmer doesn't keep his job through the 2009 season, and probably is Tennessee's all-time wins leader in terms of a head coach, passing Neyland. And I think he was roughly 28 wins off of that. So that day in Athens defined the SEC, both with Leak at Florida and Leak not at Tennessee, for the next half a decade.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it was probably, do you think it was a mistake by Fulmer? I get that you think it was a great coaching game, but was it worth losing Chris Leak for a shot in the dark chance to beat Georgia in a year where you were so wrecked by injuries, you were going to go 8-4 anyway? This
is where you and I are a little bit different. And I'll give you this. And there have been times that you've been right. Like when you said Tennessee should throw the SEC basketball tournament. I'm like, you don't throw any game. It sets the wrong tone. So, but you were right. I think that you go out there game in and game out, just trying to win that particular week. I don't think that you go out there and think about the future 2, 3, 4 years down the road, because you never know. And besides that, let's be honest. CJ Leak had the worst delivery and gave them no chance of beating the Bulldogs or any other significant team that year. Can we agree on that?
I mean, you don't think do you honestly think James Banks gave him that significantly better of a chance to beat Georgia than CJ Leak would have given him?
Let's put it this way. I think it gave them a 40% chance because they almost did. I mean, they had to kick an onside kick, but if not for a play right before the onside kick, they could have taken the lead, if I remember correctly. I think with CJ Leak at quarterback, they had zero chance. So I think it went from 0 to like 30 or 40%.
All right, well, that's a good enough number. That's worth it then. I thought it took them from like 10 to 15% or something like that. So 0 to 40 significant. Okay, so to this point, look, I think so. What? Okay, let's just throw this out here, Dave. What if Gaston Moore starts and Tennessee beats Georgia? Do you all of a sudden say, you know what, we're just gonna ride this Gaston Moore train out the rest of the year? Like, not that Nico's not our future, but we did just beat Georgia. Like, does that happen?
Okay. I do want to address that because honestly, when it comes out of your mouth and when it went through my mind this morning, the first response was, Dave, Caleb, that's silly, but it's not the worst idea in the world. Today's tough question. And the other question, if you want to take part in our poll question, if Gaston Moore is a starter, Tennessee can win, will win, won't win. We'll address that. But if Gaston Moore is the starter against Georgia and wins, is he the starter against UTEP? Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks. Okay, let me just throw this out there as a for instance, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but this is a beatable Georgia team. Okay, so let's say Gaston Moore has that dozen plays like James Banks had. Okay, and they consist of a lot of play action. They consist of 3-step drops, getting the ball out, and Tennessee's proficient on offense. They're dominant on defense. Maybe a Boo Carter special teams play because he's very close to breaking a punt return, and they somehow get the win. Does that mean you ride the hot hand? No, it doesn't. But it may mean this, that he plays against UTEP and starts because there's not only the concussion to think about, Caleb, there's the shoulder, which is also problematic. So you would allow him a little bit more time to get healthier. That may be the case whether or not he wins or loses because Tennessee's going to beat UTEP with Quincy Calhoun at quarterback.
Well, this gives me a lot of what we're talking about gives me a lot of Rick Clausen, Eric Ainge 2005 vibes, where Eric Ainge got wrecked against LSU, down 21-0. Rick Clausen comes back and leads the comeback. By the way, Dave, I still don't know how Rick Clausen led that comeback. I watched him the rest of the year. He was a terrible quarterback. Terrible. And I feel very comfortable saying that now. Like, I don't care what people say about wanting Rick Clausen over Ainge. Eric Ainge was a better quarterback. Rick Clausen had the worst arm ever of a starter at Tennessee history.
Quick Uncle Dave story. The only person that I've ever interviewed that said, I will not answer a question from you was Rick Clausen during a press conference.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. I wrote a column how recruiting package deals don't work. And I specifically pointed to Sims, for instance, the Sims family, and I pointed to the Leak family, and I brought up the Clausen family, and boy, they read that not the way I intended it. They say the reader's always right, but I didn't intend it that way to call them out. I just said that typically those package deals don't work, do they?
No, they don't work. They don't work. Tennessee tried it twice with the Leak family and the Clausen. Actually, you're right. They tried it 3 times, and none of them worked.
I can only think of one that worked really well, and that would be Del Baker, Vincent Yarbrough, who were half brothers for the basketball team.
Well, they obviously recruited Eric Berry so they could get Evan Berry later.
That's exactly what they did. I really thought Evan and Elliott were borderline guys. I kind of thought they got an offer at the time because of the Tennessee legacy, which you typically do not do.
Evan was at least a 4-star. He could have been a good safety, just never developed into it. Elliott was just, maybe they got Elliott to get Evan because Evan was an All-American kick returner. I want to point out, to the Nico situation, though, guys, this is all speculating because we still think Nico's going to play. But, if Gaston Moore comes in and doesn't play well, but they somehow win, which is what happened with Rick Lawson at LSU in 2005, because the only reason Tennessee won that game was Jamarcus Russell played like complete dog, and Les Miles is the worst in-game coach in the history of in-game coaches. I got to be honest, you do maybe create a little bit of a rift at that point. But yeah, I do think you have to go back with Nico. Now, we're talking all this. I'm with you. I still think Nico's going to play. I mean, I wrote yesterday. I wrote what you wrote, Dave. So I want to cite a couple of things, which is that you reported that a source told you Nico has cleared concussion protocol. I was listening to Sports Animal yesterday. Josh and Swain had Austin Price on, and Austin Price is reporting that Nico's been doing more and more at practice every day and is trending in the right direction.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah. So if that's the case, look, we talked about this yesterday. Jimmy Hyams brought it up. The thing everybody's missing, it may not be his head. It may be his shoulder. I mean, that could be the real issue right now. He may have already cleared the concussion issue.
I've not been led to believe that's the case. My understanding with concussion protocol is you not only have to pass it early in the week, but you also have to pass it later in the week. And I think that's the issue. Travis brings up a couple of good points. One, what would Drinkwitz do in this situation? He's standing business, Josh. That's exactly what he would do. But Travis does bring up a really good point. We act like Nico has been a superstar. He hasn't. He's been adequate throughout the course of the season. But I think since halftime of the Alabama game, he's been a different player and would give the Vols a substantially better chance of beating Georgia.
Significantly so. Significantly so. Yeah. I mean, guys, we watched Gaston Moore in the second half of that Mississippi State game. Dave, Tennessee ran it every time to just try to get out of there with the win. When they had to throw it, the best Gaston Moore did, as Jimmy Hyams pointed out, was draw pass interference penalties.